Welcome to the Circuit Loop, a podcast that takes an up-close and personal look at innovation in and around the credit union ecosystem. Once a month, we'll bring you in-depth interviews with the people within credit unions and the companies they work with who are making innovation happen. The Circuit Loop is brought to you by Circuit, formerly known as Members Development Company, a 25-year-old CUSO dedicated to providing innovation and development to the credit union industry. I'm Brian Link, CFO at Circuit, and I'm honored to be your host. So without further ado, let's get started. On today's podcast, we have a real treat for you. My guests, plural, are the founders of the 5 companies that made up Cohort 2 of the Circuit Accelerator Program. They are Arjun Sehgal with Ascent, Kara Oppenheimer with Goodbye, Catherine Carpenter with Constant AI, Gwyneth Borden with Remit, and Saeed Kian with Ribbon. We just wrapped up our formal program work with this cohort, so it's a perfect time to talk with this group and pick their brains a bit on the accelerator. On the podcast today, they share perspectives on their expectations coming in, what they found most valuable about their experiences, and what advice they would give to future accelerator companies. Hopefully this conversation gives you a sense of why we were so excited to work with these founders and their companies, and why we're even more excited to see where they go from here. I hope you enjoy my conversation with our Cohort 2 founders, Arjun, Kara, Catherine, Gwyneth, and Saeed. Welcome to the Circuit Loop podcast. How is everybody today?
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Great.
Be here.
Good deal. Yeah, nobody knew who to speak first, so your guys are like, great.
One,
Hey,
two,
yeah.
three.
Living the dream.
Catherine, you want to say hello?
Excited.
Kara, do you want to say hello? Yeah, we're not going to do that. So, it's great to have the whole gang here today. Really excited about this. The goal today is to do a bit of a retrospective, kind of an after-action report on your experience as the second cohort of our Accelerator program. You guys weren't the first guinea pigs, but you were the second guinea pig. So we learned something from the first ones, but we still have a lot to learn. And so this conversation is part of that. It's been less than 2 weeks since you guys participated in our showcase event, which in many ways is our graduation, if you will, from the program. So you've had a little bit of time, a little bit of distance, not much, but a bit, to sort of reflect on the experience that you've had or that you did have. And so our goal today is to get your thoughts on that experience, primarily what went well, and what could have been better during the program, and then maybe a little bit of advice to the companies that come after you in terms of trying to take advantage of the program. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Perfect.
All right. Well, let's dive in because I know you guys have a lot to say. So to get us started, Catherine, we're going to start with you. What were your primary goals or hopes when you agreed for Constant AI to participate in the accelerator?
Well, this is actually my third company, but my first accelerator experience. So I came in looking for something really specific, honest feedback from credit union executives who might eventually buy our solutions. There's already a little bit of tension there. So before investing heavily in scaling our new product, we already had connections to 5 digital banking platforms and 7 cores, but we're investing in this new AI voice solution. I wanted to validate our pricing, our go-to-market strategy, and whether we were even framing the problem correctly. So I think what surprised me the most was how much I ended up learning. I'm even talking to Dustin early on. He's like, well, you already have these connectors. I'm not sure what you'll get out of this, but let's see what happened. So I thought I was bringing a fairly well-defined solution to the table, but through those conversations with the advisory council, I realized we were thinking too narrowly about the problem that we were solving, and that accelerator experience gave us access to perspectives that we couldn't have gotten anywhere else, and it challenged our assumptions I didn't even realize we were making.
Excellent. Well, that hits on a couple of themes for us, right? Feedback directly from credit unions, right? And particularly with some emphasis around go-to-market. So that's good that lined up well with sort of your expectations. Gwyneth, how about you and Remit? What were your goals? What were you looking for coming in?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Catherine talked about, really understanding, where you need to prioritize your build when you're developing your product further. How do you do the right messaging to reach the audience that you want to reach? And, kind of like everything from like pricing and some UX. So there were some really great insights that I got in terms of how to be more successful in my go-to-market. One of the things like we were going back and forth on connecting to the core because in our industry, traditionally people don't do that. And I heard loud and clear that people wanted us to connect to the core. And so, we are investing in that. And so I think that is, really what you want. I mean, you don't want to, the best feedback you can ever get when you have a company is from the people that would buy your product, right? And to really have them really take the time and the interest in helping you cultivate how you think about it, and help you frame your thinking, and how you can reach them better, is everything that you could ever want, and that you definitely don't often get that opportunity. Like, I had a survey, I remember back in the day, and I had people pushing it out to their networks, and it was really hard to get respondents. And I got in this program all the kind of feedback that I had struggled to get with just what I thought was a simple survey with a link.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds bad, but it's hard to get people to be honest with you unless they're actually going to buy something, right? I mean, they're just very rarely going to tell you the truth, right? They're too nice to really give you the honest skinny. Saeed, let's go over to you. Let's go to the other end of the process. How do you gauge how well the accelerator delivered for Ribbon relative to your expectations on the front end? So similar to what I just asked the other ladies, but now kind of at the back end. What's your thought kind of from then to now?
Yeah, it was the ability to talk to customers and experts, but also in a manner that was walls down. And I think that allowed a level of specificity of feedback that was extremely valuable. So, like at the end of the process, I think going into it, I was like, oh, it's really great. I got to talk to credit unions. I got to talk to experts. I got to talk to people who actually work in credit unions. That's exactly what we want. I think the thing that kind of went above and beyond was the fact that it wasn't in an environment where I felt like I was pitching and it was someone who's a vendor pitching to a buyer. And it was instead at least kind of framing it in the context of this is genuine feedback, which meant that I could get walls down, or at least a little bit more unguarded, unsolicited feedback, which was really helpful. So, for example, when it came to like pricing, right? You wouldn't go into a normal environment at a conference and be like, hey, tell me about, like, does this pricing make sense for you? That wouldn't make any sense. But in this context, you could be like, hey, this is actually how we do pricing. And we got phenomenal feedback on it across the board. So I think looking back on it now, it wasn't just the fact that there were experts and customers. It was experts and customers in a context in which I felt like they could have their walls down, I could have my walls down, and we could have more unguarded conversations.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Because again, that is again, thinking thematically about what is it that, where do we bring value to the table for the companies that are participating. And that is an area where, fortunately, we're very lucky in that our owners are interested in participating and willing to give that kind of feedback, right? Because in some ways that's risky for them too. There's a reason that your prospects don't tell you, hey, you should probably charge more, right?
Yeah,
Even if they think that, right? They're not going to tell you that, right? So
exactly.
Just as an example. So, Kara, how about you in Goodbye? What did it meet expectations relative to what you expected?
Yeah, absolutely. We similar to Saeed. So Carrie and I came in with a certain mindset about this. We were actually already participating in another accelerator simultaneous. So when we initially had our conversations, it was, wow, we want to be a part of this. It seems like it gives you a lot of access, a lot of opportunity to grow your solution because we're particularly early in our journey. And time is everything when you're a founder. It was sort of
Right.
like, can we get the value out of this without like running ourselves dry when there's only
Mhm.
five of us on the team? And it really did live up to the expectations. I think it was the perfect balance for us. And I don't know that anyone's talked about this yet, but of commitment and time spent from us with value that we received out of it. So it is to me, at least in my experience with the accelerator, because we had a couple going simultaneously, unique in that every one of them has their own sort of benefit. In this case, we're obviously not actually testing our product. So it's a little unique in that way. But I think what was so great is that it allowed us this opportunity to sort of like pull back, and get this 30,000 foot view, like he's saying, unguarded, vulnerable conversations. And I think for me personally, sitting in those calls and continuing to reiterate, we want real feedback. I would love for you to say you love the product. That's great. But this isn't about selling. This is helping us be able to sell in the future,
Right.
and adjust our pricing. So we came at it from, we really want to understand pricing. We're new to this, to the credit union environment. Neither Carrie or I grew up in this space. So we count a lot on these kind of conversations and advisors and the conversations with Dustin too, and your team.
Mhm.
So Yeah, I think it really did live up to the expectations because everybody came, walls down, as Saeed said, or more vulnerable, to say, are we charging too much? Are we charging too little? Like, let's figure out where our product market fit is here and really discover a little bit more depth to the problem that we're solving. And I think even more than that, the opportunity inside of our product that we weren't necessarily aware of. When you're in your silo as a team, you start talking through things and
Yep.
you say, oh, we could go this way and this could be our next feature. But when you're actually having conversations with credit unions who you see on the call, maybe not even say anything, but you see them light up when you show them, their admin portal and they see the data they get from us, we're like, oh, wait, this is more valuable than we thought it was. And it just sort of changes that conversation. So I think those little moments that not even were spoken, but were just seen, were really, really helpful to us in this journey.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so Arjun, okay, over to you. You get a tough one. Not that the others weren't tough, but this is a little tough because it's specific. So during the program, was there a particular experience or activity that you can point to as being really particularly valuable to Ascent?
Yeah. That's a tough one because I'll give you kind of two answers for this. Yeah, so we came into the program, and this relates to this. We came into the program with a few institutions, about 27 direct institutions already on it. But we came in the program that we were having a identity crisis as a company. So we had this vision of data infrastructure being super critical, but that's really boring and really hard to sell to credit unions. So coming into the program, kind of similar to everyone else, which we found really fascinating, was having these honest conversations around like how do you capture in essence like kind of this infrastructure layer that you need for AI. So it was really, really good timing. And this relates to, we had a conversation, I think it was past the conference, it was me, Dustin, it wasn't actually a conversation. It was like three credit union owners, Dustin, my co-founder, and I sitting together like the last night of the owners meeting, grabbing drinks and them just grilling us and us grilling them on what works, what doesn't work in the most kind of non-sales, non-pitching manner, just curiosity. And that helped shape kind of not just it helped shape how we pitch Ascend for until recently. We literally we went back and we reshaped our processes, defined it with more specificity and ROI. So it's really, really impactful. I think all of these things helped all the classes, and that was really helpful in getting the team on board. But to have that honest conversation with someone without the sales pitch was just, I think that's again one of the reasons that excited us for this was this is again, I think been on a few accelerators now with Ascend previously as well. So what got us to say yes when Ethan and Dustin came was like, hey, the community is more impactful, not just in the time frame that you're there, but even post the when the accelerator closes, which is exciting for us.
Got it. Very good. Okay, Catherine, back to you. Um, what do you think? Where does that fit in terms of your experience? Do you have something particular that you could point to?
Yeah, this dovetails into what Kara said earlier about roadmap. So the biggest impact that it completely changed the trajectory of how we think about our roadmap around our agentic AI voice product. So one conversation in particular reframed our product from being a skip a pay solution, a single workflow, even though we thought it was the perfect wedge, into something broader, which is what is the next best action for helping members avoid delinquency, right? It's not a product, but an actual solution to a really big problem. And that insight that we got from both the circuit team as well as the advisory council opened up that roadmap for us. So we started thinking about if somebody calls and they get denied for a skip a pay, for example, that's it. The conversation is over, but you still have that threat of delinquency. And Gwyneth, this was going to really speak to you, right? So, what is the next best action? If they talk to a human, they'd probably offer a deferment if they were 30 days past due. So, how do we stitch together those solutions and waterfall that for the member based on credit union policy? That was something we did not anticipate doing at the beginning, but it is a much stronger positioning for this. So it's not about features. Also, our pricing strategy, we thought we had it just right. We made massive changes to it and added some flexibility around it. Same for the go-to-market approach. So I think Most founders hope to get validation from a program like this. For us, we got a little bit more transformation than I think we were even expecting. And then so my feedback to other founders who are part of the next cohort and future cohorts is like, understand that the goal isn't to get approval, it is to get challenged. And I think everybody here would agree with that, that the companies that will get the most value out of this are the ones that are willing to have those uncomfortable conversations and test their assumptions. It is truly a learning opportunity if you embrace that. There is, like I said at the top of the conversation, some tension. So if you're uncomfortable discussing pricing or strategy or weaknesses in front of potential buyers, um, that's exactly what makes the program valuable.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. We're going to do, if any of you ever done fantasy football, we're doing the version of the snake draft. So Arjun, you're back up, even though you just went, and then we'll work our way back around. Not exactly in that order, but sort of along those lines. Thinking about future cohorts, Catherine alluded to it. So let's go there. So as we look forward, now you guys are done. So Arjun, you specifically, what what could we have done better, and what advice, and how would that maybe fit into advice for future cohorts? I mean, that, because it kind of works both ways, benefits for them. Well,
Yeah.
anything we can do to make it better will generate benefits for future cohorts.
Um, get beers with Dustin and Ethan. That always helps. Uh, I think honestly, just be for us that I wish we had done was be a little bit more engaged in the community sooner rather than later. That for us is a little bit later on, and I think that's something I take back as we could have done. Um, I think that's the biggest feedback. I think one of the things that, obviously we wish would be a little bit more guidance on how to get a sales process going. That was never the intended target. So that's kind of where I wish we could have learned a little bit better from kind of the circuit team. But apart from that, I think this was the most impactful accelerator we've been in, right? We want to get in front of customers. You gave us that. We want feedback. You gave us that. I think on us, we just have to be, if I was getting into this again, I'll just be a little bit more mindful about how I can engage the community sooner rather than later. And I think that, yeah.
All right, I'm going to put a pin in that sales process comment because I want to ask a question about that. But Kara, recommendations for improvement before we move to sort of advice for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to piggyback a little bit on what Arjun was saying, I think for Carrie and I, we both didn't know how valuable the actual events and in-person experiences would be. I will use the word lightly, but it sort of had this intimacy and family kind of feeling compared to a lot of other events, right? Us as fintechs, we're out there like hustling at fintech meetup and these massive events, and it just feels so sometimes salesy and smarmy, and you don't want it to. You want to have authentic one-to-one real conversations that are humanful and about the credit union movement, like people helping people. And I really felt like there's a couple other conferences I've been to that are intimate like this, but I think one of the most valuable pieces for us was the conversations had with both the circuit team and circuit members at events and experiences adjacent to it. There's a lot of timing that kind of intersected. So I would suggest to other founders to really utilize that. I feel like I know that the accelerator is this moment in time, but I actually feel like the relationships we built both with the circuit team and the credit unions that are a part of it and the events that we'll go to as part of this family in the future means that it doesn't really end. Like I know I was thinking about that when you asked early, Brian, like you're kind of reflecting on the experience you had. To me, it doesn't feel like it ended. We did our showcase, and now it feels like it's actually more the beginning because we'll be at another circuit event soon. We'll be
Right.
sort of the crew that's there and that you've supported and that you help kind of push along. And Dustin and Ethan and crew have said the same thing, like you have full access to us still. I'm still forwarding things to them, being like, I want your thoughts on this. So I think
Mhm.
for me, it's about utilizing that. And then from an improvement standpoint, without seeming greedy about it, I think, and I've mentioned this to some of the circuit team members as well, we just want more feedback. We want to know that it's not just N of two or N of three. And I know credit unions are so busy just the way that we are, but if there was a way to increase the amount of participation and the variety of credit union types in certain parts of the accelerator, even if that's about trimming down the time they have to spend with us, or creating more one-on-one multiple conversations, we'd be more willing to give our time to that, especially if it's with customers, if we can get a way that allows them to more of them to show up.
Right.
So I think, in full transparency, it's just volume of access to those partners it's already amazing that we get that access to them, but just having more of them. And I think the most value that we had, and I'll just end here, is when there were lots of credit unions on a call and they were engaging with each other in response to a question we had, because then you can really see how they're thinking through things. But when there's only one or two, and the participation is lower, it's a little harder to kind of
Yeah.
siphon that value out of those calls and those actual accelerator meetings.
Yeah. I think that's always going to be a challenge for us, right? To marshal
Totally.
that kind of participation. But you're right. It's exponential in its impact to go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 6 to 8, right? As opposed to, 1. I mean, one's
Yep.
great, but to your point, it's 1, right?
Yep.
Okay. Last question. So I'm going to ask of a couple of folks to get us towards the end here, because again, I want to be mindful. Hopefully, you guys can. You probably got stuff you need to go do. I'm just guessing. Just an idea I have. Gwyneth, we're going to start with you. Kara alluded to it, but I want to get specific. What advice would you give to incoming companies? So let's think about cohort 3 and 4. What if you were just having a beer with them? We weren't around. What would you tell them to do to try to get how do you get as much juice out of this thing as possible?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I mean, going back to the in-person, I think, we had that in-person kickoff event and really better leveraging it themselves, just really thinking about how they're strategic and going around and introducing themselves and getting to know people, because we had great advisory board participation. The program is like every other program where you have those people who are the super participants and always show up and they're willing to provide feedback. And then there are a whole bunch of people that are kind of more lesser engaged. And so at the in-person meetings, you have an opportunity to connect with those who may not be as engaged on the advisory council. So really going around, getting to know people, understanding, why they're involved in circuit in the first place. And when you are sitting at lunch or whatever, having those conversations, introducing yourself, letting them know you're not really trying to sell them at that moment, right? But that you really want their feedback and how, and even seeing if there's ways to chat if they don't participate in advisory council, or encouraging them to participate in advisory council, because I think that is the most valuable. I'm so grateful for the people that did participate, but there were a lot of the same faces every time, and so it would be, I think, if you can leverage the in-person to expand that network, I think that's wise.
Gotcha. All right. Saeed, we're going to go back to you. We're going to give you the last word here. Again, same question. Advice to cohort 3 companies or cohort 4 companies. What would you tell them? Again, assume the circuit people are not around. It's just you guys and gals talking. What would you tell them?
I would say it's as good as you make it. I think it's easy to be reactive and let the events fall on your calendar, and those events are very high quality, and you can do that, and that will be very good. Being proactive is going to have exponential returns. So I think all of us so far have mentioned how amazing in-person time is. Why not reach out and say, hey, I can come visit your office. I can do that, and just as a circuit accelerator, I can come do that. Why not try to reach out more proactively in addition to the sessions that are already on the calendar and say, can I just get 10 minutes of your time for office hours? So I think looking back on it, there was so much value we got out of every call of just asking them about, whether it's the demo feedback, about our go-to-market strategy, about pricing. I could have easily just also done a follow-up with anyone who wasn't on the call and say, hey, I know that timing didn't work for you. Is there 15 minutes that I can get in the next week? And I'm sure they would have said yes. In fact, I'm sure they will say yes if and when we reach out, even as the accelerator ends. So I think the thing I would say is it'll be as good as you make it. And if you put in, more effort and energy, you'll just have more payoff.
Excellent. So a couple things to wrap us up before I let you go. I heard a couple of things that I think are crucial to us as we think about this as a longer term program, right? Something Kara said that sort of struck me is, I had sort of set this up as okay, you're graduated, you're done, right? And you've moved on. And I think the reality is, and we are thinking about it in this way, but I think we want to reinforce this both with you, with future participants, and also with our owners, which is you really just completed phase 1, right? And now phase 2 starts, right? Which is post program, right? How do we get the best out of that, both for you and for the owners, right? Because we're in the game of bringing innovation to our owners. This whole program is about that, right? We want you to be successful because that means we're successful, right? So we've got a vested interest in that. And so the phase 2 piece as Accelerator grads is important. So just want you to know, we hear that loud and clear. We want to lean into that. I also heard, pricing, discussions around pricing are super interesting because it's really hard to get feedback around that. We want to make sure we continue to do that for future cohorts, particularly those, most companies that are going to be in the Accelerator are going to be fairly early stage in the sense that they've got something developed. It's not pre-product, right? It's not idea stage, but it's not fully pressure tested and vetted either, right? And pricing, it's just so hard. In general, pricing is a revealed preference, right? People don't tell you whether your price is good or not. You just have to figure it out whether they buy it or not, right? It's super hard. That's whether you're selling potato chips or financial services. It doesn't really matter. We want to continue to lean into that because I think that is an exercise that's really beneficial. And then this sales process, sort of piece that came up, I think that's something, as I think about it, I want to try to push our credit union owners who are participating to be as transparent as possible about how they buy. I know those were conversations were had, but sometimes they don't even always know how they buy, right? And so I think pushing that, these are complex sales because they're complex organizations. They have a hard time saying yes. They take forever. We know these are all things that are true because I've sat on your side of the table, right? I ran a fintech that sold to credit unions, and it was a while ago, but this part hasn't really changed. So I think those are leverage points that will be they were important for you from what I heard. And I think they're pretty enduring themes as we go forward. So we're going to continue to work on those both within the program. And then in phase 2, this graduation phase 2, right? I want to help there as well in terms of continuing to think about some of those. So with that, I know we could keep rolling. There's a lot of things we could keep talking about, but all good things must come to an end. So this podcast included. Thanks again to each of you guys, you and your colleagues, for participating in the Accelerator, for taking time to be on this podcast. Hopefully it wasn't too painful. Generally, my experience with fintech founders is they love to talk. I was no different, and to get a chance to talk a little bit about your organization, even indirectly, is never a bad use of time. So hopefully you saw it that way. And I'll be talking to you guys soon. So take care and best of luck to you and your companies.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to the whole Circuit
Thank
team.
you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Circuit Loop. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube if you prefer video, so you can hear each month's new episode. Take care and talk to you next month.